Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. This is Funny Wine Girl, aka Janine Luby. And for those of you, I always start off by saying, if you've listened before, you know, and if you're new to listening, I do like to start off the podcast just sharing a little bit about how I got connected with my guest. When I first started, it's gonna be 3 years. I'm super excited to share. In May, it'll be 3 years since I've been doing this, and I couldn't be prouder because not because of me, but because of the wonderful women that I talk to every week. But I like to share a little bit about how I got connected with my guest. When I first started, it was mostly people I knew. I'm so glad that it has grown beyond that. So it's like second degrees. It's like that 6 degrees of from Kevin Bacon or whatever they call it, because here's my thing. I know the pandemic had us locked up, but we do need to connect with people. I'm just a big fan and believer of that. And I know last year the Surgeon General talked about the dangers of isolation, and we need to connect with one another. And not just for I mean, there are wellness benefits, but there's benefits as a society. But you never know how you can help someone or even how they can help you. So I always say be open when you meet people. You don't know just on the surface, excuse me, you might talk to someone 5 minutes, but then as you get to know them, maybe through the years, you're like, oh, I didn't know you did that. And it's just a lovely reciprocal thing throughout life that we can help one another. So, my guest today, I came across because of Trisha Richards, that you might recall from about maybe 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. Trisha was on. She's a friend of mine and a colleague. She has a lovely platform business called I Need a Speaker. And it's so I need a speaker.com. You can go there and find just an amazing rich catalog of speakers, fantastic speakers. I'm on there, but that doesn't make it fantastic. There are many other wonderful people on there, including my guest today. And I saw one of Trisha's posts because she does a great job promoting on LinkedIn. So if you're on LinkedIn, follow Trisha Richards, follow I Need a Speaker, especially if you are a speaker, you can get on this website. If you're a conference organizer, event organizer, and you're looking for a speaker, you can find someone who speaks on just about anything and everything. And so I was thrilled when Trisha posted about Adrien Cotton. Adrien is my guest today. And when I saw that she's not just about wellness, which that's something I love to talk about and do, even though we have to meet ourselves where we're at. I'm running, but it's not as pretty as it was. And it was never super pretty, but I'm doing it. As I said to my friends this morning, I'm off the couch, and that's always better than sitting on the couch. But what I loved is that she talks about menopause. And from my stand up and my podcast, I've been talking about my perimenopause. So, like, I am ready to dive into this big time. So, without further ado, good morning and well, it's afternoon. Hello, Adrien. How are you?
Hello, I'm happy to be here. I'm doing very well despite the weather.
Yeah, we talked before I hit the record button. So, Adrien comes from a sunny place from
I do.
California,
I do.
and it's rough for her right now, right?
For my 35th year, yes.
You never forget home, I guess, right? Where the sunshine
No,
is.
no, and visit as often as I can.
So that's one thing for us to learn. And when I say how I get connected with my guests, a lot of times I know them already or know at least some things about them. Other than the fact that you are a fabulous speaker who focuses on wellness, and you do, present on menopause, I don't know a lot about you. So if you wouldn't mind sharing, just for me and my listeners to get to know just a little bit about you.
I would be happy to. So, as I mentioned to you about 4 or 5 minutes ago, I'm from Southern California, which I think has my roots in Southern California, Orange County. I'm an OC girl, has a lot to do with what I do now. So originally, I grew up, I'm the youngest of four in Garden Grove, California. I used to take the bus to the beach after school every day, or I'd ride my bike. And so I spent a lot of my days and my evenings outdoors. And in my upbringing and all the way through college, where I went to school in the Bay Area of San Francisco, East Bay, I was always athletic and I was always active. Sometimes I played organized sports. However, in the McGillivray family, my family, we always worked. So after school sports, I didn't do very much of. So then I came out to DC in my junior year of high school for a scholarship program that Georgetown runs every year. I don't know if they do it anymore. And it was for students who are really interested in government and history. And I took the plunge. I came to DC and I said to myself, I want to come back. I love this place. It was so different than Southern California in so many ways. And so I loved the history, I loved the politics, and so much so that after my undergrad program at St. Mary's College, go Gales, I decided I wanted to come out here and work in politics. So it took me a few months. I moved back home to Southern California. It took me a few months, and I landed a job here in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill. And I worked in politics and public policy for about 17 years. So through that time, I worked on Capitol Hill. I had a fantastic job on Capitol Hill. I was working on the House floor in the chamber as a 27-year-old.
Wow.
I worked for some amazing people who still to this day had such a great influence on me for my work determination, my loyalty, and my work ethic. And then I eventually ended up in corporate America. And at that point, and that was my ultimate job, and that was my ultimate dream, was to have this big corporate communications job and have this big paycheck and this big house and all of these big dreams, quote unquote dreams. And I just wasn't where I wanted to be. I was not happy. So at the time, Bill, my husband, still my husband, said, do it. You've always wanted to be involved in fitness. Do it. So I had my master's degree from Georgetown at the time. I worked and got my master's degree at Georgetown in public policy while I was working on the Hill. I don't think I slept. And I was going to leave all that because I had a very promising career in public policy and really in public affairs, communication about policy issues. And I had a whole bunch of friends and network in that world, and I left. And I opened the first strength training gym in Alexandria, Virginia in 2004. Yeah.
Wow.
So my roots led me to politics because it was part of our family too. We talked a lot about policy and history and current events in my family. The dinner table at home was always some discussion about current events. So I land out here. I loved it, but it wasn't feeding me. So I started this gym, and over the course of time, another 15 years later, I had accumulated over the course of time. I had a partner most of the time, a business partner, a co-owner, and we together developed a approach to strength. And
Wow.
strength being not only physical,
Mm.
but strength being something that truly can lead, I believe, can lead us to not only physical, spiritual, emotional, mental health. So I had that gym. And then after that, I can tell you real quick, after that, I decided I wasn't serving my purpose yet because I had been through perimenopause, and we'll get into that in a minute. And I had watched so many women struggle with their bodies, with their waistline, with their lives. And they were toiling away at the gym, sweating, 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 eating salads with chicken and dressing on the side, and not seeing what they wanted. So I closed the doors to the gym and I opened up Alexandria Wellness, where what I do is I work one-on-one or in small groups of women in my practice. I speak, as you know, I lead workshops. I have an online course, and it is to help women midlife. And we can define that wherever we want to define it. It's somewhere around 40, and help women in midlife find their new brand of wellness, which is going to be different than it was in your teens, 20s, and 30s. So I help them define it, and then I help them find their strength in a variety of ways: sleep, stress, calendar, food, and exercise. And that's what I do now.
Okay. Well, there's a lot to unpack here.
I know that was a lot.
So,
You said you can say as much as you want, so I'm
yes.
an open book.
Well, only because you have so much there that I want to follow up on. Okay, so one, of course, as soon as you said Orange County, I'm sorry, this is probably the least thing you want to hear about. Yes, I have watched The Real Housewives of Orange
DOC.
County on
Yep, of course.
Bravo.
That's what we're known for. But there,
The
of course,
OC.
yeah, there's so much more to the OC than the television show.
Yes, I know. And that I stopped watching it because it's trash,
It's
but whatever.
okay.
It is. It was entertaining at the time. So I instantly thought of all those characters. But I am fascinated too. And I want us to dive into the wellness, but to hear like the fact that you were in DC and you're on the floor and all of that, and where we are today with politics. And I'm not talking like, what party or whatever, but it is fascinating, I'm sure, and to be part of it had to be incredible. And policy too. I mean, you were, I don't even know. Most of us probably don't even understand. And now I worked for Blue Cross, which is now Highmark Blue Shield, in health insurance in the communication side for about 11 years
Okay.
before I left. So, but you know, there's like I would talk sometimes to the folks in the policy, and there's so many moving parts to
Mm-hmm.
healthcare.
Truly.
Let me just ask you before we get into the wellness side of it, how is that for you? And how is that? Because I feel like as we go through life, we never really discard anything. I feel like all of our experiences serve us in some way.
Yes.
What you saw and what you learned from policy, and if it touched upon healthcare and all that, how did that build a foundation for you?
Well, I will first answer the question about what being in that field taught me that still carries to today. And that is truly that everyone wants what's best for themselves and for others. And so, how can I serve? Because I'm in service to my clients, I'm in service to the audience, I'm in service to your audience today, I'm in service to you. So, what am I going to, how can what I teach you open up your eyes to a variety of solutions? And that would apply to policy as well, for sure. So, how I open up the eyes, that's my job. And if I haven't, open up your eyes and others' eyes to a different way of looking at wellness or a different way of looking at, I worked on the budget committee. So the House Budget Committee at the time we hadn't had a balanced budget in our country for decades. And so what we did was doggedly work on the message to get the message out to the American people, the American public, that it was that important. We need to balance our budget as a country, the importance of the budget. So I was real, and I'm still very, very focused on the budget of our country. But yes, I think it's more to answer your question, it's to open up the eyes to others to individuals who want particular things, your wellness or a balanced budget or healthcare. There are a variety of solutions
Yeah.
and we can all come together.
Okay. We can. Yeah, we can. It seems like it's getting harder.
Yes,
Would you want to, I would imagine obviously as you mentioned earlier, our needs today as me as a 52-year-old woman are not the same as 30, they're not the same as even
no,
5 or 6 years ago.
no,
And so I imagine as you've gone through your life, would you even want to be in that mix nowadays? Like on
absolutely.
You would.
Yes, every
Okay.
once in a while, I every once in a while, I wouldn't call it regret, but I definitely look back on those days so fondly. You are surrounded by so many individuals who have such interesting stories of why they're there. I mean, in the government field, you are not compensated as well financially, but I do believe that you are surrounded by some of the brightest minds in the world. And there's a reason they're there because they care and they have almost like a purpose to this different policy, whatever it is, if it's communications, if it's telecommunications. I have friends in almost every area of government, and they're passionate about what they do, and they love it, or else they wouldn't be in it
Yeah. Yeah, I
in the
have heard
hours.
that from people there that there's certain energy. It is certainly electric, right?
It is absolutely. I would consider it.
Yeah.
But right now, I'm a little
Wow.
busy
Yeah.
helping
Well, yeah,
women.
you've got enough on your plate right now, but
Yeah,
so we'll get to, and I want to get back to the wellness here in a second, and I don't want to get too, but do you still hold out hope that we can work together after what you've seen? And I'm sure you still hear from people. Can we work together in this country to bring it back? I feel like we're getting farther apart sometimes.
it's hard to see it. I know. I was so lucky to work for a member who worked across the aisle. He was famous for it. He had a lot of individuals in the party where I was working that were not very happy about it, but it can be done. You just have to open your mind. There are a variety of ways to get there. It takes more time,
Yeah.
it takes more patience, it takes more knowledge, it takes a variety of viewpoints. Yes, I have hope.
Yeah. Okay, well that's good to hear. That's good to hear. But you, like you're saying, a lot of the patience is maybe like something a lot of us don't have these days,
Sure.
especially in the
Mhm.
world that we're in. And I won't blame technology, but we've gotten into this like instant gratification, touch this, get that, and that kind of permeates kind of how we look at things, I think, sometimes. And we have to take a step back and go, like, just like with health and wellness, it takes some time, it takes good
Yes.
habits, it takes good foundation. So let's transition into that. So the wellness side of things, I do want to get to the menopause, but on the broader scale of wellness, tell me what appealed to you. And I have to say, by the way, audience, take a look at her website, and I will put it in the show notes. You got some cut arms there. I am jealous. You are like, clearly you are a good advertisement for what you're doing, because you're living, you look darn good, you look healthy too, you look very healthy.
Thank you.
What drew you to that, and tell us the broader part of what you do with wellness, and then I want to get into the menopause.
I have a lot of answers to your question.
Okay.
So let me repeat it back to you so I make sure that I answer yours and your audience's needs. You want to know what it is that brought me here to
Yeah.
this and why I'm so doggedly, um, I'm so focused on this.
Yes.
I believe we have this one life. So, I mean, just as an aside, my arms or why I'm so focused. I'm 57. So, how is it that I feel better in my 57-year-old body than I did in my 47, my 37, my 27, my 17th? How is that? Because I've learned, particularly after my perimenopause prison, which I'll explain to you later, that we have one life and we have this one body. So, what am I going to do with it? So I'm going to learn what I can that works for me and suits me, not what society wants me to do and not what Instagram wants to tell me to do, but what I know works for me in this phase of my life. I'm full blown in menopause. I've been in menopause since my early 40s. So why? It's because I believe we sometimes forget. We have this unbelievable gift of this body that we take for granted until we lose something. As an aside, I lost my voice for a long weekend just recently. It puts you in an interesting predicament when you have no voice.
Mm.
It's almost like you lose your power. I definitely felt powerless. So when you lose something, then we tend to have a better appreciation, greater appreciation. But I truly believe we have this body, we have this life for however long we are going to be living here. Let's take advantage of what we have. Learn our tools now. And look, I say in our program, change your mindset about what it means to be 57. Change your definition of what it means to age. And focus on those really small strategies that are going to get you to a place where your well-being is the best it possibly can be, because mine is. Does that answer your
Wow.
question?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And I love what you said there about, like, you lost your voice, for example. You're absolutely right that we don't appreciate, and there's nothing like losing something to remind you of how lucky you were to have it in the first place.
Right.
Years ago, just a simple example, I got a flu shot at this like clinic, and it was after I left Blue Cross. So my health insurance was probably not as good or the best, but I think he hit a tendon and I couldn't lift my arm, and it took several days, and I have a wonderful chiropractor who I love, and he showed me ways to stretch the tendon using a weight in a circular kind of pendulum kind of motion. And it was a little thing, but not little, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't raise my arm, my left arm. And you don't even, like, you just get up in the morning and assume, if your arms worked yesterday, they're going to work today. And so you're right, we don't, but we're just, it's great to take a step back and be grateful for the body we have, but to learn
Right.
to treat it well so that we can live well. So let's get into the menopause part. I've been talking about it because I'm 52, and I noticed the belly fat, not again,
Yes.
and I will freely own that I don't eat the best. I will own that. I'm a carbaholic. I will own that. I know I need to change that. But it was all of a sudden the belly fat. Like, I would put on pants, like I say,
Mm-hmm.
pants with borders, like, with those buttons. And I'm like,
Yeah.
hello, when did this
Right.
happen? And now the past couple of years for me, it's, I don't have the hot flashes. I have mood swings.
Yes.
I have like lows that scare me. I don't mind some of the other stuff, but like I get angry, but I probably always had that, but like I get low and it's
Uh-huh.
hard to be productive because I feel so low. So I know the hormonal stuff that's going on. And for me personally, none of my doctors even suggested checking out my hormones like in the blood
Yeah.
work. A couple friends had that done. I'm like, why aren't they even asking about that? One just said, hey, here's a anti-anxiety, which I filled but never took, and I have no judgment. I just, for me, that was just what I did. I
Right.
had a nurse practitioner who did my gyne exam. I told her what was going on, and she said, well, this I hear works for hot flashes. I know you don't have them, but it might help with the hormones. And she prescribed an antidepressant.
Yep.
Had that filled and did not take that either. So ultimately, right now, the only thing I will tell you I'm doing, because I know it works, is exercise. But I need to do more of it. And unfortunately, I always say I wish it could be bottled. It only does last for so long. So for those days that I'm feeling low, it's even harder because you're like, you know what you're going to need. Get
Yes.
outside, get that brisk walk, get that run. And I know I'm learning and I want to talk to you about that. I see the ads on YouTube. The cardio is not going to help, ladies. The weight training is what I need to get into. So I've
It
just
is.
told you my story, but wherever you want to begin, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you a specific question. Talk to us about menopause.
Yeah, let me start with, and thank you, because I think it would be helpful for you and for our listeners to hear my journey, because I think they might relate to one, because I had it all. So I had our children late. I had our kids at 40. So I have twin 16-year-olds. So you don't need to do the math because I've already told you I'm 57. So I had my twins at 40. And by about 42, 43, 44-ish, I started having a lot of symptoms, but I didn't know what they were. And that is often one challenge, is that women believe they're just busy, they're sleep deprived, they're putting weight on. All of these symptoms, vaginal dryness, which is one of the four, these things are just happening because I'm busy, and they chalk it up to whatever. Who knows what they're going to chalk up their vaginal dryness to? It's just, they don't even want to pay attention to it. I didn't. So I believe I was heading out of postpartum depression straight into perimenopause. So I would say my stress was out of control. I was reactive. I worried so much about what people thought of me. I was just anxious. I was not sleeping, in part because, yes, I was also experiencing night sweats. I have a son who had night terrors for about 3 years, which means he was getting up, running around the house, screaming
Hmm.
because he was being attacked by a dinosaur. Or I was just up worrying about, you name it, work, where Bill was traveling. He traveled quite a bit that time. What was going to happen with William, because he was really struggling at this time? And what about the repercussions on our daughter, who was seeing the whole thing happen because they shared a room? And then I had this vaginal dry. So I had them all. So you have hot flashes and night sweats are one of the top symptoms of menopause. It is the top symptom. Then you have anxiety, and I can explain that in 10 seconds. Then you have sleep disruption. They sort of go together. And then you have vaginal dryness, and weight gain is right next to them. So I had all that. I had a lot more weight around my waistline than I'd ever experienced. And it almost like it hit me like a ton of bricks. One day I just realized I can't get my clothes on. And I owned a gym. So what did I do? I toiled away on the spin cycle. I ran. I did what we call deprivation dieting. I would skip meals. I would eat salads. I would eat protein break bars and shakes. I would do all those things that I had thought I learned in my 20s and 30s and in my teens, and nothing was working. And I was really in a dark place. I luckily landed in a menopause specialist doctor's office. And I believe an angel took me there, because within about literally less than 5 minutes, she heard my symptoms. She said, I don't even need your labs. You, my dear, are in perimenopause. I still had my cycle. So that's the other thing. We have our cycle in perimenopause. We may not be really great about tracking it. Listen, the young women now in their teens and their 20s, I think they're better at tracking than at least I was, and most of my friends were. So maybe I didn't recognize if I missed one or if I was, later or earlier than before, but I still had it. And we are heading into menopause. So perimenopause is the transition to the phase of life where reproduction ends. It's the transition. We are still able to reproduce, but we have all the symptoms of menopause. And that anxiety I told you about a minute ago is because our brain is wondering what is going on. It is definitely noticing a difference in our cycle. And so it is anxious anyway. So foundationally, our brain's already anxious. And then you add on to it children or others who are taking care of, like elderly parents, teams at work, friends, aunts, uncles, you name it, pets. We take care of everyone. And then foundation is our brain is stressed. Make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. I hear
Yes.
myself in that.
So
Yes.
what happens is we don't tend to our wellness in a way that is holistic and broader. We have been told by the $100 billion industries each of diet industry and the fitness industry, work harder, eat less, which may have worked for me when I was trying to squeeze into jeans when I was on Capitol Hill in my mid-20s. That does not work for me anymore because my body's different, completely different. I need sleep. So my wheel, my wellness wheel that you've seen, it focuses on the wheels, the spokes of the wheel start with sleep. Even when you're having night sweats or you're having fitful sleep because you have children or you've got some reason you're waking up in the middle of the night, which is also getting up to go to the bathroom. That's also very common for menopause. Urinary tract infections, very common in menopause and perimenopause particularly. Allergies, very, very common. Everything is changing. So we start with sleep. Even if you just focus one evening a week at getting to sleep 15 minutes earlier, you are doing yourself a favor. So the foundation of my work is sleep work. So we talk a lot about how can I get that 7 to 7.5 hours of uninterrupted sleep. And we try just one night. We don't take on 7 days a week. We don't run the marathon before we just walk the block. From there, then we work on stress resilience. And I truly believe that stress resilience is another key to our wellness. We tend to not think about the range of tools that we have at our disposal that cost nothing. It doesn't have to be massage. It doesn't have to be getting our nails done. It doesn't have to be spa. It might just be learn how to breathe.
Mm.
Change the way you breathe. Take 2 minutes there, take 3 minutes here, take 5 minutes there to walk around the block. Find your tools, and then we will be much likely to get our sleep, more likely to get our sleep. Over the course of time, that patience then comes back, and we'll be less reactive. Our cortisol, our stress hormone, will calm down, and our serotonin, which is our neurotransmitter that helps calm the brain, will go up. Cortisol wants to go up all the time. It is like the queen of all of our hormones. She loves to be in charge. She wants stress. She likes stress. But there are ways that we can control it and we can at least manage it and have tools for resilience. Then my next wheel, spoke of my wheel is calendar. We as women love to take care of everybody else before us because it feels good. Again, another neurotransmitter or a hormone that we get a big boost from is dopamine when we help someone else. We don't get that much of a big rush when we take care of ourselves, but over the course of time we do. So I really believe at this phase of our lives, we need to take a hard look at where are we spending our time.
Mm.
I'm talking relationships. I'm talking everything. How much time are we spending on the devices? How much time are we spending taking care of others? How much time, where, if I were to look at everyone who's listening at their calendar right now, would I see their purpose, their core values? What's important to them?
Mm.
Is it on the calendar? And I'm hoping that wellness is there in 5, 2, 10, 15-minute increments. Then we go to food and exercise. Because I think when you set the stage with sleep, you feel like $1,000,000. It takes time. It may take
Yeah.
somewhere between 3 to 4 months, but I can get you to sleep. And then you're going to notice your stress is less because when we don't get our sleep, we do crave sugary foods. It is a hormone, ghrelin, that is increased, that's elevated in our brain that tells us we need something sugary to stay awake. We need the energy. We also, when we don't get our sleep, we also our hormone leptin. It controls our satiety, or when we feel full, it goes down. So
Okay.
we're craving more food and our brain is not triggered to tell us you're done. So you set the stage with those three, and the diet and the exercise come along. I really believe it. I've seen it. I live it, and thousands of women I've worked with. It works.
So is that why, like, I'll be on YouTube and I'll see, usually it's this guy, I don't know what he's selling, but it's like, oh, the running, it's not going to help you. It's not what you need. Is it because of the really starting, like as you mentioned, with the sleep, so that no matter how much cardio we get, it's not going to fix that situation with the hormones?
Yes. And so your hormones are changing. You have less time. Most of us, starting somewhere in our early 40s, all the way up through our mid to late 60s, we just tend to have less time than we did in our 20s and 30s. So, therefore, making the most use out of your exercise, strength training. First of all, since we've been sitting here for 30 minutes or so, our muscles and our bones are atrophying. We need resistance training, which simply means we are pushing against a force. That's it. It doesn't have to be some heavy barbell or it doesn't have to be anything terribly heavy, although I am a big believer in lifting heavy, but it's not for what you might think. It's not for big muscles. It's for confidence.
Mm.
Because the first time I see a woman do a pull up with me, oh my gosh, she's walking on air when she's leaving my studio or online. It's confidence that you can do it. And frankly, we are supposed to be able to do a lot more than we push our bodies to do.
Mm.
Primally, our bodies are supposed to push, pull, climb, hang, crawl, carry, and we don't. So yes, you're going to burn more fat and build more muscle with resistance training, because what happens with resistance training, the science is that we're burning fat longer than
Okay.
if we did a cardio round. Now, we do need cardiovascular exercise, but because we are pressed for time, I can give it to you in the same session. So your strength training becomes something you master, and then you get better at it. And then I can either push you with higher repetitions or more load or more intensity, which is neither the other two. Really channeling in again, know your body. What's your intensity level? What
Yeah.
can you do today? Understanding how to turn on tension in your body and then relax it, and breath work. Get to know your body.
Yeah. Which I think a lot of us were so busy, as you mentioned earlier, caring for everyone else, we're not paying attention to our body, or we're like, I can need to take time to get to know myself, right?
It's really true. It's the saying that I like to say is I think we live outside of our bodies most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
take note. Take note. Yeah. And then on the food, because I hadn't really gone that deep into that, I truly believe we need to reestablish a relationship with food in midlife. because most of us were raised in an era where deprivation dieting and counting calories was truly the roadmap for beauty. So in
Mm.
1921, a doctor by the name of Dr. Lulu Peters, she came up with this concept for Hollywood actresses that taught them that if they restricted calories, they would be beautiful. And we have been holding on to that concept since Dr. Lulu Peters 100 years ago.
Wow.
Uh-huh. And we know that the whole calorie counting science is flawed. The formula behind calories, how people count calories and the labels of calories, was developed 100 years ago and has not changed.
Wow. Yeah, and yet everything, so many other things have changed. Yeah, yeah,
So many things have changed, but some
yeah,
reason, yeah, the food industry really benefits from calorie counting.
yeah. Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Let me ask you to follow up just on something you mentioned about like we're sitting here and our bones are atrophying in 30 minutes. So many people, and I'll admit I get guilty of this. So many people were at desks, and now I know they have the treadmills that you can walk on or the
Right.
standing desks or
Yeah.
whatever. What is something you would tell folks who, just because of the nature of their jobs, are
Yes.
either seated in a meeting or at their laptop? What's a tip that you would give to them so that they can kind of lessen the damage, so to speak, of that kind of lifestyle?
I am a really big believer in moving around about every 30 minutes. I too am either behind the wheel between my studio and home or somewhere for our children, or I'm at my desk. I do have a standing desk. I do believe in standing desks. However, we can also be slouching at our standing desks. And by the way, there's no perfect posture. Just making sure our rib cage can remain a little bit open to get some oxygen into our system is one of the biggest things I'll tell women to do. Just, and then let's pull our heads back because our heads are typically a few feet in front of
Mm-hmm.
our bodies. I would say get up every 30 minutes and walk. If you can walk 1 minute for every 30 minutes you're sitting down, of course, I would love more. I'll start with 1 minute. And then a bonus would be to get down on the floor and up from the floor without using your hands.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. I'm gonna have to try that later after I get
Yes,
see if I can still do
it's
that.
called the sit rise test. And it was a doctor in South America. He studied tens of thousands of patients over the course of time. And it was Dr. Araujo. And he found that individuals who got down on the floor and up from the floor without using their hands, it was a top indicator for longevity
Hmm.
because you're using strength, you're using flexibility, we're using mobility in our joints. And if you do it 10 times, you can text me later. You will get cardiovascular work in there.
Wow. Well, I could tell you right now, I think that's going to be a goal because I think I would fail because now I've succumbed to, listening to you say our bodies can do more, but we've stifled them, I guess. I am like I'm one of those people now that I sit down or get up and I go, oh, I make noise with everything I do. And I'm on the floor and I might flip over and get on all fours to get a boost up. And
That's okay. That's okay. I'm a big believer just getting on the floor, period. We don't get on the floor.
Yeah.
Get on the floor. Our body knows where it's in its space. Our brain knows where it is in space, I should say. So it's more comfortable. It can breathe better there. We can feel all the different parts of our bodies on the floor. Squeeze our bottoms, flex our feet, separate your toes, take your shoes off. I mean, feel the ground under your feet, your knees, and your hands. It's incredibly powerful, the brain. And then get back up and get back to your work.
Yeah. Well, I use a foam roller and not enough, honestly. And so when I get on the floor, like even for my back was screaming the other day, and I finally I
Does
had to
it?
get on the foam roller, and I'm like, it does feel good. That, and I know they say putting your feet straight up, like leaning them against like a wall or whatever. Just
Legs on the
that
wall.
feeling. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
we
so
do
nice.
that at the end of all of our sessions. We put legs up on the wall and everybody celebrates.
Yeah.
Where if they're on Zoom or if they're here in our studio, they celebrate some big success from that day.
Yeah. That's great. Well, and I don't want to take too much of your time. And I want to tell my listeners, please check out the show notes because I am going to put a link. Adrien has been kind enough. There's going to be a link to her wellness blueprint. And I will put the direct link because it is adriencotton.com and then it's slash uncorked. But I will put it in the link so that, or excuse me, the show notes and on social media when I share this podcast so that you can just click on it and see a free copy of the wellness blueprint. And of course, follow Adrien Cotton on Facebook and LinkedIn. And she's also on I need a speaker.com, as I mentioned earlier. As we wrap up, what I know that I hate to give you a big general question because you do know a lot on a lot of stuff with wellness, but is there a key point or a key tip or something that we did not talk about that you're like, can't forgive myself if I get off this podcast today and don't say it? Is there anything that else that you really wanted to talk about or say?
You really are a mind reader because I thought, oh gosh, we're wrapping up and I didn't say this one thing. Don't settle. If you feel like your body is not feeling right, and if you are above the age of 40 and you can be into the age of 70, you find the right practitioner who can help you, who has experience. I am a really big proponent of seeing a menopause specialist. It is a doctor who specializes in menopause. Oftentimes, even our OBGYNs are not. They are not schooled on menopause. Big study out of Johns Hopkins a few years ago, 75% of OBGYN graduate students did not feel comfortable and confident speaking with women about menopause. Find a menopause specialist. They are really, really wise about this phase of our lives. And don't give up until you find one that you really are comfortable with and start feeling better because you can. Don't give up. Don't settle.
My one follow-up to that would just be and I love that you said that. So I'm here in Scranton, northeastern Pennsylvania. It's healthcare is that could be a whole different topic, but it's tricky. I'll use the word tricky right now,
Yes,
especially depending on who you are. Like I'm a solopreneur, I buy off the marketplace. I'm
yes,
still relatively healthy, so I do I want my monthly premium to be low, but my deductible is high. So not everyone is at the same, it's not a level playing field.
true.
I'll hear different people who have better jobs or better healthcare, or they have more money, they have better healthcare. We like here locally, we don't, someone would say a mena what? We don't even have that. So maybe the closest would be we're 2 hours from Philadelphia or go to a larger
Yes,
city. Is it covered? We get all those kind of like, I don't know if it's going to be covered. And I won't be negative there. I'll say definitely look into that, folks who are listening. But it can be difficult for folks who aren't covered, who don't have the means to do out of pocket. For those folks who maybe can't get to someone like that, there are things they can still do though, like looking into folks like you who are,
oh, yes.
coaches, wellness experts. There are things they can do for
Yes,
themselves, right?
absolutely. Yes. I feel like it's a two-pronged, a parallel path, I should say. First of all, it's menopause.org to find a menopause specialist. And you're right, they may not be in every there are many of them. There are many more than maybe you may think, but yes, you're right. They may not be in some outside of the big cities. At the same time, focus on your big picture of your wellness. Look at every day as an opportunity to learn more about your sleep, your stress. The two of them together right there will take you so far in this phase. Think about how you spend your time. Focus on strength when it comes to your food and your exercise. Absolutely. Yes, get strong. Yeah,
Yeah.
parallel path. If this path is one where you run into some roadblocks, and you're absolutely right. It can be expensive. I would say even if you can find shop around, get a consult over Zoom, and then go to your primary care who is covered. And this is just to make sure if you really want to know, you need to get some labs. But I really believe you can do a lot with the tools you already have. I do.
Yeah. Oh, I would agree with that. I mean, think of all the things that you've just mentioned in this conversation, and a lot of it we can do on our
You
own.
can. we
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, so that's great. I know as far as sleep, mine's not terrible, but I do like to listen to a sleep meditation app,
Great.
which is a women. It's for women's mindfulness. It's funny. I put on other podcasts that I actually want to hear what they're talking about, and they tend to put me not because they're boring, but I just fall asleep. It's like lulling. I think certain voices, not everyone's.
Yeah,
But the other
that's
one, I'm like,
great.
okay, now I really want to sleep. I'll do the women's sleep meditation app, and it's very okay, we're gonna fall asleep now kind of thing. And it's very nice.
And do you sleep all the way through most nights?
Nights are not every night is the same.
Okay.
Some nights I will get up to go, to the bathroom to pee. Other nights I don't. And I do take, and I don't, I'm not asking, you don't have to comment on this if you want to, but I do get occasionally heartburn. So I
Hmm.
started taking Alka-Seltzer gummies that have melatonin in them. And I've
Great.
had an interesting relationship with them because while they helped, I reached a certain point where they were no longer helping,
Yeah.
and I was kind of having odd sleep. Like I was aware of my sleep. I don't know. I'm sure that I listened to interesting podcasts about the different levels of sleep. I think it's fascinating. So
It
I don't
is.
know where it is, but whatever it is, I was kind of like almost aware of my sleep. So then I stopped using them for a while. And now I started using them again because I noticed lately this past week or two they've been very helpful about helping me fall asleep and sleep through most of the night. But I know melatonin, some people like it, some people don't. And I have to say, these gummies, they recommend two. I only even take one. So we're talking the tiniest amount of melatonin.
Great.
So, yeah.
And just like what you said, this works for you. And it stopped working for a while or did some things that were a little different. And then you tried them again. And that's what we're doing. This is a journey. This is a journey. We're trying new things out that we hadn't considered in the past. And the only thing I would say about getting up in the middle of the night is stop drinking water about 2 hours before bed.
Yeah.
That will help a lot of women.
That's a tough one for me because I would say among my good habits, and I don't have a ton. Well, I don't smoke, so I guess that's a good thing. I don't smoke, but I'm always drinking water. Like my friends used to call me a camel because they're like, and I was very good about not having to go to the bathroom until the past few years. But that's one of my good habits. I do drink a lot of water. Of course, then recently I'd heard that you can actually drink too much. And then I was learning about that problem. And
Oh
I'm
my
like,
goodness.
yeah, and I was like, I
You're like,
never
oh my
thought that
gosh.
that's a bad thing. I was always told you can drink as much water as you want, but I guess to some degree you can't. But
Well, it seems to be serving you, except the getting up to go to the restroom.
yes,
That's the only one
yes,
I would say is, if that's something that you or any of your audience members are experiencing, then your listeners, I would definitely look at stopping the liquid at a certain time.
yes,
Yeah,
yes. And there are simple things a lot of us can do that, like if we're aware of, if you really are having trouble sleep, the TV, the phone, all that stuff is not a good idea right before bed. That's got to go, right?
it's got
That's
to go.
just, yeah,
That's got to go. It's 1 hour. I mean, the experts will tell you it's not only just the screen, it's the content. The brain is doing so much work all day long. Sometimes it just needs to stop.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me last night. Again, I'm aware. See, I always joke that I wish I was ignorant because I'm aware of all the bad stuff I'm doing. I'm just not changing it. I was looking at my phone last night, and then we'll wrap up. I'm sorry, but it was just too funny of all things to introduce my brain to this idea that there's apparently a deer zombie disease going around. And I'm like, deer zombie? What the heck is this? This is what I went to sleep on. Apparently, it's like a neurological disorder that deers are experiencing
Oh,
where
wow.
they're like they get a blank stare, they're drooling, they lose like ability to move. And now of course the article was like, is this going to impact humans? And I'm like, oh well, that's good for me to learn right as I'm
Yeah,
trying to
just
go to
before I
bed.
go to sleep. My son's going to be really interested in that. Of course, these teenagers love zombies.
Yeah, well, have them look into that. It
I
of course
will.
I was watching an SNL sketch. It was their news segment where they parody the real news or like
Yeah, of
comment on it, and that's where I learned about it. So of course, then that led to what a Google search of this deer
course you did.
zombie.
Yeah, and you read an article and you watched
Yes,
a video.
of course I did. So
Of
I am
course
my
you
own
did.
worst enemy, and I think a lot of
Yeah,
us are. Ladies,
we
so
all
you know,
are. We all are. And you know what? We're all so hard on ourselves. We
yes,
are really hard on ourselves. We need to give ourselves a little bit of a break. We really do.
yeah. Absolutely. Well, on that note, I want to thank you so much, Adrien Cotton, and I'm going to put your the link to your website and a link to the wellness blueprint in
Beautiful.
the show notes. And when I share this so that people can learn more about you.
Thank you so much for having me on, Janine. It's been so fun talking to you. It really has.
Good. Well, thank you so much. And I've learned you cannot imagine how excited I was when I saw Trisha's, post. I was like, menopause, I've got to talk to this
Thank you,
woman.
Trisha. Yeah, thank you, Trisha. She's amazing.
Yeah, she is. Yeah. Yeah. People are probably, I joke about it, but at the same time, I feel like we need to talk about women's health more and we need
We
to
do.
like these kinds of conversations because women can, excuse me, benefit from them. Not only that, but men who are in the medical field. I mean, you need to understand, you need to learn about this and talk about it.
You do. And men are dads, partners, uncles. Men also, it would be really good for men to learn too. I really believe it.
Yeah,
50%
absolutely.
of the population is going through it. I think men need to know.
Yeah, when you put it that way, it's like, yeah, maybe it would be beneficial, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I
You're
look
welcome.
forward to the sunshine for you in the warmer
I
weather so
know,
that
me
you
too. I'll be there in a month.
get back to California.
I'm going.
Well, thank you to my listeners. And again, check out the show notes. I will have all that information in there. And as of course, I always mention about, I have a link to my Buy Me a Coffee if you'd like to help support this podcast in that way, or reach out to me because I've recently started with getting podcast sponsors, which I'm super excited about. Emily Hickok's Budget Through Life. But if you're interested in learning more about that, just message me. I have the information in the show notes. And as I always say, don't worry if you don't have a couple dollars to support this podcast, because you know what else is great? Sharing. Sharing is caring. So if you can share this episode, share it with a friend, a foe, anyone you know. Talk about it to folks when you're waiting in line at the grocery store, write a review, anything helps us little guys and gals get the information out there. And, I love to promote these women. They have a lot of great information to share and it can help you and it can help the folks that you know in your life. So thank you so much. As I always say, I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of my wine glass.